Rick Harsch here. I just started this new thing where I'd read a few pages of the beginning of a book, and then my voice went all wacky on a couple of the Instagram sites, and I thought, why is my voice going all wacky on the Instagrams? And then I thought, well, damn, I can't do anything anymore. And then I thought, well, sure I can. What do I care? I just got this new book, A Circumnavigation through Maritime History, that I wrote, and I like the introduction to it, but I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's more than 5 pages. I might read 6 pages or 4.5, I don't know, but I don't want to go, up to 30. But I am telling you that I am reading in the voice I used to have, and that's what I hear before I give it to Instagram. So someone at Instagram is making a monkey out of me. Introduction. This is called A Circumnavigation of Maritime History, not because I will take readers around from a certain point in order to return there, rather because it is a circumstantial navigation. Many digressions will be made to taste the fruits of Tahiti, as it were, but it is especially circumstantial because it could not be otherwise. Just as 2 circumnavigations of the globe were never the same, neither are 2 histories. I hope to avoid such calamities as beset the first named circumnavigator, Magellan, who may have actually been the first had he lived to return to the point where he started. Instead, he was cut down by tribesmen from an island we now include what are called the Philippines, but which at that time would best have been referred to as Terra Malidea. Let us hope I do not meet the same fate. Yet I do not truly harbor that fear, for I am not of that tribe who consider readers aboriginals. Rather, I expect they have the same wild gales of humanity whipping up within, the same horror of the mundane, the rote, the terra tu firma, of a world that has given us schedules and joyless work, predictability, and vast unnatural holes that suck hope from man the way maelstroms devoured the ships in 16th century nightmares. That is to say, that I believe my readers will differ little enough from me that they will accept my navigational decisions, made as they are in good faith, more than anything to avoid the shoals of tedium. Further, history is in itself a beautiful thing, doomed like life to failure. I think that life can be compared to a sinking ship, and that history is an act of sailing to a shore that isn't there. Like Columbus, we think we know exactly where we are going, and we will arrive somewhere. Only we will never know how far off course we really are. Consider this. Maritime history begins with the first time the human animal floated, yet no one has any idea when, where, or how that happened. The space for speculations in this regard is the introduction. 2 possibilities seem to exist. Someone wanted to cross a river and figured out that some particular object, a large chip of tree bark, would continue floating even with his weight to support, and so climbed aboard. Or someone wanted to cross a river and realized that clinging to a floating object, a large branch maybe, would keep him afloat. Perhaps 1,000 years passed between the 2 steps and the inevitable third, the use of wood bound together to create a raft. Maybe it all happened in one day. But we mustn't take too much for granted. Man does not always avail himself of the latest technologies. If it is true that once Hannibal's army crossed a river by using bloated bladder technology, soldiers each clinging to or riding an animal skin stuffed with 1 or more bladders filled with air. It is also true that about 2,230 years later, I saw a man in Bern, Switzerland, strip out of his business clothes while standing on a bridge over the Are River, stuff his suit and underclothing into a bag he then sealed, and leap into the river, which, swiftly flowing, delivered him to a riverside restaurant faster than a taxi would have. I later learned that in the warmer months this habit was common among the Bernese. I wonder, too, if the man from Bern was not also illustrating the first method of navigation, safely choosing a destination downstream and double coasting from there. Coasting remains the surest means of navigation if you accept the proposition that we tend to trust what we see with our own eyes, even over the most advanced intangible information system. But while coasting generally refers to sea or ocean navigation, remaining within sight of land, my guess is that the first navigators did their traveling on rivers, narrow enough that they could see both shores, which is why I call it double coasting. Perhaps the first mutiny occurred at a fork in just such a river. These speculations may be infinite, but that's no reason to weigh anchor before discussing the first bollard. By now, it may seem obvious, as I have chosen to locate the origin of seafaring in rivers, but if you're thinking the first bollard had to be a tree, take another moment to reflect. Isn't it more likely that the first bollard was a person? Standing on the bank of the river, holding a raft by a length of twine or vine, waiting for his fellow tribesmen to gather jackfruit, becoming impatient, and finally getting the idea to tie the twine to a tree. The cliché that necessity is the mother of invention never entirely satisfies, for invention is too often clearly a bastard, and impatience is a gigolo. Nor can we accept necessity as a lady of virtue. The need for ballast almost certainly involved a drowning. Ballast, by the way, generates complexities all its own. Now that we seem to have finally realized that mankind has maltreated his environment to the brink of inevitable and ultimate inhospitality, serious studies are being made regarding the effects of violating ecosystems through the dumping of ballast water. Certainly the first use of ballast as a separate object from the mariner was the second mariner, who determined his position according to the need to balance the boat. Interestingly, the definition of ballast given by a very fat and esteemed dictionary, Webster's Unabridged, makes no mention at all of liquid. Any weighty, compact substance as stone, sand, or iron placed in the hold of a ship to give it stability. Yet it is seawater that is uniformly used in commercial vessels today, and given the ecological damage perpetrated by ballast water exchanges, the history of the move of ballast from solid to liquid is worthy of a separate volume. The present volume, however, being a history, will concentrate largely on extinct habits, forms, and needs, along with the developments that led to maritime circumstances of the present. Changes in habits are often predictable, often surprising when our memory of them has faded, and changes in form may be taken for granted, yet surprise us again and again when certain aspects of form have not changed as much as we have suspected, or in such cases as the Bern river traveler, in essence not at all. Changes in need appear to be the most absolute. For instance, basic provisioning of potable water by the old method of hope and chance is no longer necessary. But if nothing else stays with the reader who subsequently boards a vessel, some knowledge of this aspect of maritime history should make him appreciate each tumbler of water he downs on board ship. As one reads accounts of the sea ventures of the past, the line between man's courage and his imbecility seeps rapidly to cataract and turns the muddy color of the Amazon estuary. Maritime developments themselves are often unchartable. The chapter on terminology, entitled Casamata, provides an illustration. The term casamata is most probably the Slovene equivalent of the Italian casamata. But even if that is so, it only leads us to the unnavigable fogs of the word's etymology, which we can ignore to some degree if we at least know what a casamato was and is. You will find in that chapter that such a seemingly simple task is as deceptive as the placidity disguising a riptide. Take 5. Thank you. Let's see what I sound like.